Everyone, it's Ross, and today we're planting raspberries and blackberries. Actually, we're really changing things around in the backyard. We talked about this, detailing this in our orchard plan. We mapped the whole thing out. We've done many videos on what it is I'm going to do in these different areas now. We actually just put down some potatoes here, just an empty spot, covered it with straw. A lazy way of planting potatoes. We just put in some pear trees here, a 4-in-1 pair, 2-in-1 pair. We've also got a row of plums and apricots. Sorry, I'm out of breath here because I've been digging, trying to get things done. I got somewhere to be in a little bit. Also got persimmons here. That's Guang Yang. And this down here is, who are you? Great Wall? Great Wall. So we got 2 Asian persimmons. And they're going to be dwarfed, right? These things don't get too big. Probably about 10 by 10. You know, I can keep them shaved down if I want. And this whole area here is what we're doing today. This is going to be a raised bed of blackberries, a raised bed of raspberries. Because this was a raised bed. We took off the sides. We knocked the soil down. Really spread this around. And the whole reason for that is because I really didn't like this whole raised bed. I didn't like the raised bed over there as well. And the whole reason is just they're not very productive. You have to care for them a bit more. You really have to mulch them. You know, you have to keep adding more amendments every year. Also, this big shade tree here, we've talked about this, really has its roots down up into the bottom half of this raised bed. It was a foot high. And I think it's just an overall better idea. I'd rather create a natural look, a natural raised bed. Just mound up some soil. You know, it's a really great idea to do this when you're putting out your vegetable beds as well. You know, you can frame it out with a piece of wood, right? You can really make it look nice and neat, but there's absolutely no reason to do such a thing and keep that soil in there. It doesn't really make sense. It doesn't even look that great. A lot of people are doing this all over YouTube, probably in your garden too. And for me, I'm just not a big proponent. You can do whatever you guys want to do, okay? There's 1,000,001 ways to do the same thing. But today we're going to be planting out these raspberries. We dug these up. This is a variety here called Caroline. It's my absolute favorite, most productive red raspberry. There's other raspberries. There's pink ones, there's yellow ones, there's black ones, and there's purple ones. We're going to be planting this guy here called Fall Gold. This is actually this may be double gold if I'm not mistaken. I think this is double gold, but double gold is a pink one. And we have Anne coming in this spring, which is yellow. We also have 2 Royalty, which are purple, and they all have different flavor. You're not going to believe this, but the red ones taste very different than the pink ones, and also very different from the yellows and the black raspberries. They all have different flavor according to their color. As you know, as an example, the pink ones are a bit sweeter, much sweeter, less intense raspberry flavor. I actually prefer them. But I think that Caroline here is such a productive winner. I mean, the thing doesn't stop fruiting all the way from the beginning of August to the end of the year, which is November 1st. So I get 3 solid months of a fall crop of raspberries off of these. And all we're going to do here is, we already dug our hole, we've actually had one big Caroline plant here, and we split it in half. It was actually very easy. So now I have 2, and they're huge. They're monsters. They're going to put out so much production for me this year. Put you guys down. We're just going to cover this all up with soil really quickly. There's not really a whole lot to this. A lot of times when you guys get raspberry plants though, they're going to be very small plants. And it's a bit of a treat for me to have such well-rooted plants. Here's a rock. We're going to save this for the figs. But it's an absolute treat to have a really well-rooted plant. It's going to do almost as well as the mother tree would have done, or the mother plant would have done for me this year. And what I think I'm gonna do, because we're transplanting these, all the raspberries, we're gonna do this year. They put out 2 crops. They put out a first crop in the spring, sometime around June, and it's not really that big, depending on the variety. It really does depend on the variety here, guys. So Caroline, for instance, doesn't put out a large spring crop. The fall crop is huge. It's much more tasty. I like it a lot more. What we're gonna do is actually cut this thing all the way down. And this is really because we're transplanting this out. But also, I don't want this thing to go too nuts with a spring crop, even though it's not really that big. But it's gonna send up a lot of shoots for the fall crop, and that's really what I want, to get these plants to be really large. We're gonna do the same thing to the other Caroline here. Caroline red raspberry, guys, I swear to you, it is the most productive, tasty red raspberry even could be in existence. I really like the firmness of the berries. I know there's one out there that's also really great, but it's really hard to beat this one in particular. I forget the name of the other one. I think it's called Prelude, which I know is a big hit. Heritage is a big hit too. Insanely productive. I've had Heritage for years, but I think Caroline is just a superior raspberry in terms of the reds. I've done a lot of research, and I think Royalty and those are also really superior for their respective colors. And we're gonna plant this out here. Again, this is double gold. This one's yet to prove itself to me. We've also got the Triple Crown, or actually this is not Triple Crown, this is Primark Freedom Blackberry. This is a Primacane Blackberry. We also have two really small ones here. And I may actually break this up, and we're gonna plant this out. The raspberries can be planted 2 feet apart. The blackberries have to be 3 feet apart, minimum. We also need to design a trellis, okay? The trellis here that I've used in the past is simply just putting in T-posts in the ground. You can put one here for each row, because we're gonna have 2 rows of them. And then simply just putting a wire to the other end of the T-post, and that will pretty much, you can either tie them to that or develop some kind of wire system that will help contain them. So if we got a tag here that's flying away from us, we'll have to put this on the tree that it goes to a bit later here. But the trellis really isn't that difficult with the raspberries and blackberries. You can even let them just do their thing on the ground. I wouldn't recommend it, but there's a million ways to do the same thing, right? I would say out of blackberries and raspberries, you certainly want to, if they are semi-erect or erect canes, right? Depends on the variety. Do your research. You want to have some kind of trellis. The last thing I want to mention is that there is trailing blackberries. I think there's also trailing raspberries, if I'm not mistaken. There's also hybrids between them both. Some are called Logan berries, Tay berries, Marion berries. Those are definitely hybrids between them both, or even hybrids between certain types of blackberries. What you want to do with those, if they are indeed trailing, is that let them trail along the ground. They'll form a ground cover, kind of like strawberries do, and they just cover up this whole area. Now, you could also trellis them, and that's what a lot of people do is with the Primacane varieties, is that they will trellis these up, let them fruit, and then they have their next crop. I'm sorry, not even with their Primacane varieties. Most people don't even have Primacane varieties. They've got the Floricane varieties, something like Triple Crown, and they'll have a low wire here for the new canes coming up, and that will basically be trellised along this low wire, while the 2-year-old canes, which are the main fruiting canes for the year, those will be trellised up high, even to close to about 8 feet, and they'll have a wire. So there's many different ways to do this. With the trailing ones, I think I'm going to put some trailing ones in here actually. We're going to keep the Triple Crown, or the Primark Freedom. I'm sorry guys. Primark Freedom's a really great blackberry, and it fruits on that 1st-year-old cane, which is really incredible. You don't have to wait 2 years for it. It also puts out a huge berry that's extremely tasty. It's also thornless. I really don't want to have to deal with thorns when it comes to blackberries, because they're not like raspberries. Raspberry thorns are actually a bit easier to deal with, whereas the blackberry ones, they will pierce your skin big time. So what I am going to do, I think, is experiment with some Marionberry. That's supposed to be the best blackberry, or blackberry hybrid, better than any blackberry. Look it up, Marionberry. They grow really crazy in Oregon. I think that people love them there. So what you do have to do with those is that they are trailing. They will trail along the ground. and you have to kind of put them back down on the ground because they will not survive here. So you have to put them back down off their trellis, cover them up with straw or soil, any kind of mulch, and that will get them through the wintertime, and then put them back on the trellis come spring. What I may end up doing here, and this is the last point I want to make, is that this bed essentially is going to be filled with these berries. But if I can kind of contain them, the blackberries that are going to be trailing, and maybe even contain the triple crown, is that we're going to put potentially even a row of figs on this side here and another row of figs on this side here. Of course, well away from the 6 or so raspberry plants that we're going to have, and that's assuming, like I said, we can kind of develop a system to control these trailing blackberries that I'm going to eventually have in here. All right, everyone, that's sort of it. Oh, I guess site selection real quick with these blackberries and raspberries. They can handle actually partial shade. I could say 6 hours of light, definitely. That area over there, which is where they were for years, only gets about 6 to 7 hours of light depending on the time of the year. They really love the heat. I find that a raised bed actually works out really well with them because it contains their roots, and that's really the only situation in my mind that I would ever have a raised bed. But because the soil is pretty raised here, we're getting lots of heat that's going to raise the soil temperature. They really, really love that, and they'll go nuts. It's actually, both of them are some of the most reliable fruit here in my area, without a doubt. So if you're in the Pennsylvania area, even in the Northeast, you don't get much colder than I do, you're going to have reliable crops of both every single year. It's going to blow you away. You know, the raspberries, I get about a bowl every single day from August to November. So, all right, everyone, enough blabbering. You guys got the picture, I think. I'll talk to y'all soon. Take care.